Happy New Year, everyone. Today I am going to be talking to Nick Jones, who is a young videographer and editor who works for a revision marketing group. So I first started talking to Nick over email, and I figured, you know what, this is probably some valuable content to share with other people who are just now starting off in the field of videography and editing. And, we kind of just went back and forth on different things from, battling, perfectionism, which is something that we all struggle with at some point in our career, and some people never actually get over that, to things like forming relationships, and also just getting familiar with new software that you might not be familiar with. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. We'll just get right to it. Tell me a little bit about where you're at right now, how you started and all that stuff.
Okay, gotcha. So 27, I'm originally from Little Rock, and I spent before moving to Shreveport, I spent the last 6 years in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And the time that I spent in Fort Smith, I was doing work with some friends. There was 4 of us, and we were doing YouTube. And that's how I ended up getting into video. They were running a YouTube channel called Kick Genius that it was at about 500,000 subs before I came into the picture, but they had plateaued. And so I came at a point in time where they were looking to do some things differently, just kind of branch out and evolve the brand. And so, threw some ideas out there, and then I started to get more hands-on as far as the filming and the editing. But as I was explaining to Sydney as in our interviews, when doing YouTube, you're not thinking about technicality and how to, you know what I mean? You're just trying to, especially when the views are rolling in like that, you just kind of do what it is that you need to get content out at whatever rate that the subs want it at. Or when I moved to Shreveport, I was just like, man, I really enjoy film. Well, I enjoy production. And part of my journey is trying to figure out what part of that process do I enjoy the most. But I wanted to go back to the basics or learn the basics of the program. So I've always been afraid of Adobe Premiere just because it's a lot of language. Final Cut is just user friendly, and so that's the world that I come from.
Yeah, that's cool. So you kind of just stumbled into production. You didn't go to school for it or anything like that?
Yeah, not at all.
Huh. That's awesome, man. I think that's kind of like I'm about 10 years older than you are, and that's sort of where like people younger than me, about that age group and younger, are like starting to realize they don't really need to go to school to learn this stuff, Yeah. Whereas, like, back in my day, you kind of, it wasn't that much longer, but technology has just advanced so fast that you can learn it all online now. Whereas when I was coming up, YouTube had just gotten started. You know what I mean? Like, you just started to be able to, like, you still really couldn't afford the software at that time. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that you could actually purchase a single user license for anything. The company always had to buy it because it's so expensive. Yeah. So because like the first, like, when Final Cut Pro, the original Final Cut Pro came out, it looked more like Premiere. It was only $1,000. You know what I mean? Like, which was a lot for a college student, but at the same time, now you can get it for $300 and you never have to pay for it again. It was $1,000 like a year. You pay $1,000.
That's insane. Oh, no. That's insane. Okay.
Yeah, $1,000, and then you have to upgrade it every couple years or year or whatever it was. And and then of course, things evolved, and now Premiere's kind of taken over that seat that Final Cut used to have for certain levels of production or whatever.
What is your goal on YouTube? Like, what are you wanting to do, really?
Well, right now it's just initially just to get comfortable in front of a camera because so I'm really just doing it for my own, like, self-growth. It'd be nice, obviously, to get some subscribers and stuff, just like for vanity points, but really it's just to, like, because essentially the idea is to, in the future, be comfortable on camera, create stuff like Skillshare courses and stuff like that, just to kind of make some passive income. you know, because as a freelancer and a business owner, it's always like the more you can, you know, cast a net to make money, the better. You know what I mean? So yeah, I get plenty of client work. Then client work's great, but sometimes, you know, if you make a few videos and put it on Skillshare, if you can make a couple $100 a month, that's nice too. You know, so that's the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I got you. And I definitely understand that not wanting to be on camera. Like it's kind of, it sounds crazy, but I had oh, don't sound crazy, but I had very vain period where, you know, we're on camera, you get to feeling yourself, you getting some followers, some subscribers, making a little bit of money. And so I've transitioned on my personal channel to going mainly just visual and audio. And so I'm trying to see if I can capture an audience with just those two things. But, you know, I'm not it's like, okay, how do you actually go about doing that? And so part of trying to self-promote without the extravagance is, you know, doing it through the actual content. And that's much more difficult on YouTube, but I don't know why that's the challenge that I want, because I don't know. I just think that there's, as far as longevity and a real dollar, it'll just, I don't know, last a staying power. That's the ideal for at least my personal brand. But I can definitely understand the just getting comfortable in front of the camera, and I'm like, man, is that something that I might have to do again, because people are like, you know, so visually stimulated, but it's like there's other ways to go about I don't know, satisfying that for a viewer. But you mentioned the 2 to 3 minute documentary video, that format, which I don't know if it's still like a popular thing, but it's I've always liked that kind of content because it's concise. It's concise and it's conceptual more times than not.
Like, what are some of your like goals for in your life or in this business or whatever?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the main goal is during this journey, I more and more like more and more I begin to realize the importance of the film production medium, and that being so it's not just having fun, but I'm able to view it as an art, because that's truly what it is. And for some reason, it's just now as I get older and learn more, it becomes clear to me in that way. And so my goal is to be able to use it well, and by well I mean having the foundational understanding of how the two programs work. So I come from Final Cut, but we use Adobe Premiere here, and like I said, it's a beast, and it terrifies me, but I do like how I mean, it's a lot you can do in the program. And so my goal is to get the foundational things, or understand the foundation of how to at least get through a workflow. I'm not the best like videographer, I get by. And so trying to learn just those fundamental things and just capture that and take it into, I love story, I love documentary, and there's interesting people in the world, and my long term, this is the kind of content that I would love to produce. I like the thought-provoking, like Interstellar is one of my favorite movies, but the goal is to just be comfortable with a program and equipment. Like, I don't need to know how to do the fancies. Honestly, it's okay. The small transitions, you know, you're clicking too much to make this action, and that stuff really. And it's hard for me to, like, I'm limited sometimes, and this is where I run into a problem with my personal channel, is I'm limited because the idea is bigger than my capability, or at least that's what I believe. And so, yeah, just trying to really confidence, really. And so that just comes with it.
So right now, you're not very confident in the software quite yet. That's what you're getting at. Yeah. No, I get that, man. I was like that for years with After Effects. It was always like this thing because
Yeah.
I first learned on an Avid in college.
Okay.
So it's an
I don't
Avid,
even
and
know
then it
what
was
that. Okay.
okay. Yeah, Avid is like one of the NLEs that a lot of people still use it, but it's usually for big Hollywood films or TV.
Okay.
Avid was
Mm-hmm.
the gold was the standard before Final Cut
Mm-hmm.
Pro showed up and was cheaper and kind of basically just wiped out
Mm-hmm.
all their folks. Yeah, they eventually just squashed the competition. But now you can
Mm-hmm.
still find it like on major productions, but it's a lot smaller, uh, you know, clientele than it used to be. So I learned on
Yeah.
that, and then it was just hours and hours of repetition that got me good. Just that 10,000 hour rule, so to speak. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then eventually I was like, all right, I need to learn After Effects. This was like probably about 4 years into, or about 2 years into my career at the FA, into the FAA, because there was a guy who could just do After Effects really well. I was like, oh, I gotta learn that, man. But it
Yeah.
took me
Yeah.
probably 6 or 7 years before I actually buckled down and got comfortable with it. It was
Mm-hmm.
always kind of scary. But yeah, man, I totally get that for sure, for sure. So what
Okay.
are some of
Yeah.
the you say you're struggling now, but it's more just just being faster at it, or with some of the, like, is it shortcuts, or is it just like, could you explain a little bit more about that?
The little bit of shortcuts that I do know are helpful,
Mm-hmm.
and um, honestly, just like with Final Cut, I think once I understood like the basics, like the very basics,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so much more user friendly. I believe it just kind of takes. Um, okay, let me get back to the question.
No, you're
Um,
good.
so it really is like a. This is part of the reason why I stay away from Android. There's just too much that you could do, and I want to know what
Mm-hmm.
I need to. I want to know what I need to know. The learning
Mm-hmm.
curve is just so big because I'm used to just setting up a camera and we can just record whatever we want to, knowing people are going to watch it. And so
Mm-hmm.
now there's just this feeling of added pressure because now you're having to perform for a client, and me suffering from perfectionism for no reason.
Mm.
It's just like damn.
Yeah.
So um,
Yeah. No, I get that, man. I've done a lot of political spots, and
yeah.
I mean, every client's different, but we call it.
Hmm.
There's a threshold. You still want it to be. There's a point where you're like, you can make things that are still great, may not be
Hmm.
perfect, and we call it hamburgers. Yeah, I call it hamburgers. So, like, you're making hamburgers, not steak. You know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so to speak. But you
yeah.
still want it to be. You're still a level of quality, right? That you got to
Hmm.
maintain.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, eventually, hopefully, you get to a point where you do it so much that you're okay leaving some things on the table, or having a little mistake or whatever. I mean, obviously, you don't want obvious mistakes, but some things only you can notice, and some things
Hmm.
you have to ask
Hmm.
your you have to ask yourself, is this something just I can notice, or is this something that the client will notice? You know what I mean? A lot of times it's
Yeah,
just something
yeah,
that you're
and that's
you're
true.
gonna notice.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
if you are a
Uh,
perfectionist, you kind of have to get over that eventually, a little bit. There are some
Absolutely.
times where I can't get over it, but it's a practice you have to practice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one that I'm having to break for sure because it's like you don't know. Well, I say this, but it's the learning curve is so big. I can't
Hmm.
be like I can only um, just be open to the process and not necessarily being so critical on every little thing because film isn't separate. It's not separate from story, and that's not separate from sound. So it's trying to keep
Hmm.
all these things in mind, which that's part of the my reasoning for one to seek
Hmm.
um, you know getting it from your brain to
Hmm.
the screen and out to everyone else to portray what it is that was in there in the first place. And so that whole process is, so it's not necessarily just the, because I can watch hours on end about, you know, the workflow, shortcuts, all these things, the tedious things. It's like, yeah, but I'm like, what are the things that I need to know that kind of, that can roll me out of, okay, this is looking at film, developing that eye for story, and that translating into the edit, and that translating into sound design and background music, whatever the case may be. And because I am sort of a deep thinking guy, and so if I'm to love the work, or for me to, part of my enjoyment of the work is being able to kind of immerse myself in it, in the idea anyway. And yeah, man, I can only get so far because it's skilled.
You said something a while ago, just sort of like getting your brain onto the screen. You know, that's the most important thing. Storytelling is the same no matter what programmer you use. I mean, you got freaking TikTok stars now who are making awesome stories, and they're just doing it on TikTok, like in their phone.
Yeah.
So like it's all the same. It's all the same theory. It's all the same methods. It's just cut beat. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's editing can be a rhythm, you know. So it's really just kind of figuring out what that is and what works for you. And I wouldn't even necessarily say like your style, because most people don't develop a style until they're like 10 years deep or whatever. You know, like I don't even know if I have a style, but you know, it's just like one of those things you just kind of fall into. But yeah, there's still like tried and true methods and ways of editing that don't really need all the fancy buttons, you know. Like back in the day, all they were doing is just cutting on film. It's just like literally cutting from one piece of tape to another tape, you know. So it's all about just cuts and you know, your audio and stuff like that. So I mean, I wouldn't stress about that too much, because you'll eventually, once you start cutting more and more, you'll be, all those other little things like your shortcuts and stuff like that will fall into place more.
Right now we're working with real estate, and I'm trying to capture it the best way possible. And so, well, not the best way possible, I'm trying to the extent that I can. So yeah, it's not feature film, you know, the process of developing it, where it's tangible and you can begin to act. That's the part that I kind of struggle with, because that's just the part that I struggle with, I think.
Okay. No, I can definitely answer this. And I think the best thing to do is just steal ideas, man. You know, steal, you've read the book, you know, Steal Like an Artist, by Austin Kleon. It basically all the best ideas in the world are stolen, or they're just, you know, people take ideas and just kind of, you know, raise it up 1 or 2% every time. So I mean, I would like go and do a Google search online for real estate videos, see what's out there, see what's working for people, what's not working, what you like. Because I know there are some guys out there who are doing real estate video well now, especially with like the advent of like drones and stuff like that. You know, people are making these epic little pieces of film, just you know, selling real estate. I mean, granted, these people have the budget to do it, probably because they're, you know, $1 million homes, but you know, there's still some stuff out there that could give you some inspiration, you know. So
absolutely, I do look at that. I do look at, you know, what are people doing, but like I said, it's not a universal thing. Everybody has their, oh, well, you got to use this, or well, you know, I have to use this. And so yeah, it is. I guess it's just for me to discern, okay, what works for me, for what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. So
yeah, and it's mainly just for inspiration. Like I do a lot of art direction now that I'm you know, and so you know, I have like Pinterest boards. I'm like, I like this design and I like this and this, and I'll take little
that's funny.
take little
Mm-hmm.
elements of this and
Mm-hmm.
stick it in this and just combine things, you
Yeah.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not direct rip-offs, but they help spark something in your mind and get your mind flowing for
Help you think.
what
Yeah.
you're trying to do.
I'd much rather work alongside somebody who's way more talented at it than I am,
Mm-hmm.
and then we collaborate, because I'm more of a collaborative guy anyway.
It's hard as a creative to be kind of by yourself. I
Yeah.
get it, because I work alone all day, and I'm like, I can't bounce any ideas off anybody. Like my kids have no idea
Yeah.
what's going on, so I can't bounce ideas off them. Uh, so I just, in many, it's like sometimes I just have to throw stuff at the wall, or or whatever, and see if it
Yeah.
sticks. But I remember the
Mm-hmm.
one thing I loved about working in that church environment, because I was actually on a team of about 10 or so other creatives, is I can go to
Yeah.
them and like, hey, tell me if this works or whatever. And that
Mm-hmm.
was invaluable. But yeah, it's definitely tough to get the ball rolling, and especially have things like accountability and
Mm-hmm.
somebody to tell you like, no, that's a bad idea, man, don't do that, or whatever, so
Yeah.
you know or to help
Yeah.
you just increase the idea, because it's always better in teams. I agree with that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
mhm.
Absolutely.
And also like the
Um,
motivational thing, like sometimes I'm pretty good at like coming up with ideas and
mhm.
getting people to roll on them. Like I can, like a producer mindset, I can call people and make things happen. Um, but there are certain things I'm like, oh gosh, I do not want to do. I can't think right now, but I don't want to do X, Y, Z. That sounds terrible. That just does not
Yeah.
bring me joy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this
Yeah.
but you just kind of have to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's, yeah. Um,
Hmm.
but, and that's what, and thanks for taking this call out, or setting it up,
Hmm.
taking it and setting it up, because that
Hmm.
is something that, after looking at what it is, that you produce, it's like, okay, I know I still need, um, I mean, years of practice that I'm willing to endure, just because I know that's part of the process. But um, just really making my way through the program, because it's like, there's something that I want to do, that I know that I can do, but
Hmm.
I'll have to halt the edit and spend an hour trying to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that, just like Final Cut, you learn one thing and you're just like, oh, well, I can do that. Oh,
Hmm.
and the program starts to make sense.
I know that
Yeah.
there are certain times of the year where I'm going to be slow. You just kind of know a little bit. Like December is
Yeah.
always a little slow for me,
Okay.
which is nice too, because I can spend more time with family. And then
Absolutely.
January can be slow, and then it starts picking up early
Hmm.
spring, and then summer. There's like a month or so there in summer where it can be slow, and that's really times where I kind of use that time to focus on self development and and
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
programs
Yeah.
like that, or
Hmm.
getting a game
Hmm.
plan, getting your head back in the big picture game. Because sometimes I can
Hmm.
get so busy that I get buried in the weeds. I'm like, oh wait, I haven't done anything for myself in a month, and no wonder I'm pissed off all the time. You know
Yeah. Yeah. Man.
what
Man.
I mean?
I'm trying to make
So,
my way into that zone.
hmm.
Like being productive in my reflect, and because this is a
Hmm.
reflective season, I think, but trying to be productive in that and proactive.
Well, do you have any
Yeah.
more questions for me while I'm on here? Or
Man, so what's your, like, I'm always interested in, like, film, like, people who enjoy the medium. Like, what do you enjoy most about it? Like, uh do you have a philosophy when approaching projects?
I would say back in my earlier days, I loved it because I was always okay. In college, I actually majored in English for a couple years, but I liked
Mm-hmm.
telling stories and things like that. So there was that always in me,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually I just kind of got into communication side of things. I loved being able. I was like, well, I hate writing. At least I did at the time, but I like but I also I like gear, and I'm a dude, so I like
Yeah.
nerdy things, and like like
Yeah.
I like TV
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. I was always the guy to fix the computer growing up, that sort of thing. It just seemed kind of natural to get into the film and cameras and stuff like that. So I would say early in my year, early in my career, it was all pretty technical. Like, oh, I love this new piece of gear, and let's go see what it can do shooting wise. And let me see if I can break Final Cut Pro. Let me see if I can break After Effects, just that sort of thing. And see if I can learn this cool new trick. And and that was all fine and great, but there was always this sort of, I always thought story's always been important to me, as well. So I think, I know story can be kind of a buzzword nowadays, but when it comes to film and capturing an audience attention, that's extremely important. Because there's so much noise out there nowadays that, you can look over stuff pretty fast. And so good story always, wins the day, so to speak. So as I got older, it's become more about those fundamentals, getting back to those fundamentals, like you said, just like really like getting beyond the software, now the software. I've been doing this for 15 plus years. Software is, second nature to me. It's sort of like another kid or another language, it just comes naturally that it can actually get out of my way and let me do some of the things I want to do. It's not all the time that way. After Effects I still have some troubles with, like if I have a certain vision, I might have to look it up, but most of the time I have a style and aesthetic that I can do without even thinking about it now. So now I can actually focus on, getting results either for myself or for clients. It's easier for clients to get results than for myself, just because it's hard to do things for yourself, and just focusing more on that and building relationships and stuff like that. We live in and it is true if people just think about it, but we live in a world where literacy has changed. You know what I mean? It used to be like, to be literate, you had to be able to read, which I think, but now reading, everybody has, at least in America, has access to learn how to read for the most part. But having said that, now that reading, we can all read, there's a new way of being literate, and it's like visual literacy, which is like being able to tell the same stories that we can read now, but visually, and so I think that's become such a major role in our society now, especially with the advent of social media and stuff like that. But being able to, I think there are kids now who are coming up in middle school, high school, who can actually tell stories better than I can, because they've had a camera since they're 5 years old, because their dad is like me, who has a camera, they can go and make little movies at the age of 5. And by the time they're 15, they've put in their 10,000 hours, so I think we're going to have like a generation of kids soon that, where the visual medium of video and stuff like that is the new book, is the new whatever. Like, it's going to be the way that people communicate. And it's already happening now, if you think about it, with TikTok and FaceTime and all that stuff. It's just, but just like being able to be aware of that and having that visual literacy and being able to communicate it effectively is what I'm trying to grasp more lately in my career as I get older, because I'm getting to the point where I still like getting in the software and stuff sometimes, but not nearly as much as I used to. Like, I'm starting to get like, I hate to say this, but I'm starting to feel old. But old in the sense that, like, I'm tired of doing certain tasks. I wish I could have somebody else do these so I can focus on some of the more important tasks, like finding clients or, taking that next step in my business or my career. So, and eventually I will be, I'm 36, I'll be 37 in January. And eventually 15 years from now, I'll be, 50, a little over 50. And I'll be aged out, man. I'll be aged out of, no, I mean, not like that, but like in a sense that, that like there will be younger kids who, like, if I were doing the same thing I'm doing now, which is After Effects and, doing that kind of stuff, there's going to be some kids out there who are going to be in their 30s, the same age I am now, who can do it faster and cheaper than me. And not that I might have that competition, but do I want to have that competition? You know, do I want to be there, or do I want to be that person who actually hires those guys? You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm trying to set up the building blocks to get to that point where I'm more like running those younger, faster, better dudes or gals, and just like overall just seeing the process and just making clients happy and making my family happy and go home every day at a decent hour and, you know, all that stuff. So,
yeah, man. Okay. And that's interesting. You said that there's a new, or literacy is evolving into like a visual literacy. And I was having a conversation with someone recently, and they were talking about, the visual helps us understand things, right? So the words come out of the book into a picture. And so now, I mean, movies are word pictures. So there's the seeing, the hearing, and the actual like understanding and process. And I was thinking that I think that the stories are getting diluted, or they're being, so there's a really common thing, like everyone wants to remake everything. And so this is why I'm thinking like, okay, I need to get back to simplicity and fundamentals, because the reason why we're the temptation to remake something is there was something either thematic or that had just cultural value, something like that for us. We have to reproduce it, but the thing, you can't reproduce it. What was there? I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to get a grasp on what the language is. Because even like we kind of pick up on these just because like the social media culture. Like it's like in Sodom and Gomorrah, everybody started speaking the same. Like they started speaking the exact same, and I think that's kind of what's happening. Society is just imitation thing, but I think that's what's happening. And so I'm trying to like not go against it, but see how it could be
improved.
Yeah, because I think there's a disconnect, especially between the generations, and I think it largely has to do with the way that it is the way that we speak to one another and how we understand just from doing this. And so I'm trying to just go through the middle of it and find out what that content is, and that's just difficult. And I don't know why I made myself why I even want to do that, but I think it's an interesting place to kind of figure out where society is headed, what people actually want to hear, to feel, because even podcasts have become so big. And for me, I learn better by listening.
So how can we take these tried and true methods of storytelling and do it in a different way, and do it in a way that's interesting and actually like with Interstellar, man, I'm telling you, that movie, I still think about it. I love that movie too. Movie still gets me, like every time I think about it, I just kind of like give this big sigh. I'm like, oh man, that movie.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my wife to watch it, but it's an investment to watch. It's like a 3-hour movie, 4-hour movie.
It is.
So, but like it was one of those movies, just like it just like sticks to you for like a couple of weeks after you watch it. You're like, man, that was tough. It kind of like wrecked your soul a little bit. You know what I mean? Like,
but
in a good way and a bad way. So
but you have to perceive differently, right? It did exactly what film ought to do for us, which is just shift our perspective just a little bit, and it made me a bigger person, not better, but it made me take in more of the world. I think story, right? But that's part of it. I was trying to do some research on Shakespeare. I didn't know that he fathered the modern language. And so the way that we speak in movies, the way that we do all these, it comes from him. Most of it comes from him. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about him. I haven't read him. And the schools have completely gotten rid of that, right? And it's that whole foundation that is necessary to continue to develop these stories and let these stories develop us, right? And so that's where a lot of like my homework is. But then I come here and I'm like, you got all this, and I'm like, well, how can I make it happen? Not happening, but
I think you're going in the right direction. You're doing the work, which is like the most important thing, because a lot of people in our field, at least when they're not in our field anymore, let's put it that way. They start out and they just either get burned out, or they can't bridge that gap between where they are and where they want to be, and they just give up. You know what I mean? So but you've been doing it for a while, and you're still doing it, and you're looking for opportunities, and I think that's important. That was kind of like the thing that I just kept doing. I just like there was a point in my life where I was just saying yes to everything. Like if it was side work, if it was everything, like in college, I would like, if somebody wants me to shoot something, yes, I'll do it. You got a party with me to shoot? Yes. Just to kind of, to bridge the gap a little bit faster, so to speak. So
it's a pleasure talking to you, man. I've enjoyed this call.
So there you have it, folks. I just want to thank Nick for coming and talking to me. It was a real pleasure talking to him. I'm starting to find this real passion for teaching people things that I've learned over the past 15 plus years in the business, and I look forward to having more conversations like this with him, maybe even sharing those conversations and with other folks too, which I do have more of that coming up in the future. I have a few more in the can that I need to edit together, and I am looking forward to sharing those. Be on the lookout for these in the next couple weeks, couple months, we'll see. And please feel free to leave a comment down below or wherever you're seeing this. Shoot me an email, a DM, whatever you need to do. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. I appreciate you taking the time watching this. Subscribe, all that stuff. That's my call to action. That's all I'm going to ask from you. Other than that, and just enjoy the content. Thanks, guys.